All right, well, Stunlock Studios, you did it. Not only did you make my nerd heart happy with great, engaging gameplay and a deep game that I am so excited to go back to, you also managed to solve an issue that's been plaguing our culture as a collective since 2011. You see, back in the day, tween girls were fighting over a very real issue to them, which was hashtag Team Edward or hashtag Team Jacob. Would they go Team Vampire or Team Werewolf? Well, in V Rising, you can be both. You start as a vampire, and very soon, you get yourself a wolf form. And what that means is Bella Swan would not have to have chosen between Edward and Jacob. She would have been able to choose just one person, and maybe, just maybe, then we would not have had to see this god-awful CGI version of a baby or whatever you call this back in 2011. So hats off to you, Stunlock Studios. Way to go on solving a huge issue of our time. My heart is more at ease. But let's talk about V Rising, a great game so far. This is my first impression of this game, and man, I have had so much fun with it so far. I don't mean to wax eloquent and just pour it on for V Rising, but I haven't played a game that has engaged me this quickly in a long time, and so I'm so excited to talk to you about it. We're gonna walk through some things that I've seen, maybe just a couple of bad things, but really not that many because V Rising has done a great job. So let's jump in to my first impressions of V Rising. So what exactly is V Rising? Well, V Rising is an ARPG MMO question mark. It's not really massively multiplayer. It's server-based multiplayer, so you can go up to with 50 players that you don't know. So I mean, it's pretty massive, but I don't know, maybe a little M MMO RPG. And it's kind of like a Rust meets Valheim type survival and crafting game with some Twilight vampirism added into the mix. It's a really solid game, and it executes really well on the formula they were trying to pull off. Here's their press release on what this game actually is. In V Rising, you need to survive as a newly awakened vampire in a world ruled by humans and rise to become the next Dracula. Feed on blood to gain new powers, hide from the scorching sun, and engage in real-time PvE and PvP combat set in a dark fantasy realm. Raise your castle and invite friends to join you as you explore a vast open world, pillage villages, skirmish with bandits, and delve into the lairs of supernatural beasts. Attack other players' castles or become a diplomat in a game of blood, power, and betrayal. Now, all of that sounds great and very PR focused, but the question is, can V Rising deliver on this promise? Now, before we jump into the first impression, I just want to let you guys know I was able to receive a free copy of this game, but it was really interesting how it worked. I was actually on the Steam page ready to pay my $20 for this game when an email came through saying, hey, we'd love to invite you to play our game for free. So it's as unbiased a review as a free game can be, but because of that, we're actually giving away a free copy of V Rising on our stream on Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Be sure to be there for that, but if you want to enter, the instructions are down below. You got to enter before that to actually get the copy, but it's a great way to get an incredible game completely for free. Now, I want to talk to you about why I love V Rising, but I want to give you a quick example of why I think this is such a great game with a little word picture, okay? Now, I live in Southern California, and we are known for our Mexican food and traffic and way too expensive living conditions. But one of those three is really good. It's the Mexican food. And what I love as a Californian, and if you visited here, you know all Californians love the hole-in-the-wall Mexican food restaurant. It's the one that you walk up to that doesn't seem very flashy. You walk up to the counter and everything just looks pretty generic. You see their, good health grade score, but that's the only thing that would tell you that this might be a good restaurant. You take that burrito that they give you out of the tin foil and you take a bite and all of a sudden you go, oh, this is so much better than I thought it was gonna be. And then you put the salsa on it and you take another bite and it's even better than you thought it would be. And then you get to the middle and down towards the bottom where all the juices have collected and you're like, this is the best burrito I've ever had. And now that I'm telling you this, I really want a burrito. But let's talk about V Rising. V Rising is kind of like that burrito at that hole-in-the-wall Mexican restaurant. You see, when you jump into V Rising, it looks pretty simple. It looks like a normal ARPG where you're gonna go and use a couple of combat skills to grow your character, and maybe this is just gonna be a Valheim type game with a vampire reskin and some new systems. But it becomes very clear very soon that you're playing a much deeper game. You're playing something so much better, and that's the first thing that I love about this game, which is this game is deeply complex while remaining really accessible to the new player. You see, when you first start, you go out and you're just killing skeletons for bones to create a bone sword. And then once you complete that little guidance quest, well then you have to go kill skeletons, but then also some animals to create your armor. And then you complete that quest and start the construction of your castle. And so you go gather some materials from the surrounding area, and then you go create your castle. And it's a really cool thing that as you go, it just seems like a pretty simple game. And then you go and open the boss panel, where this game is developed around this idea that as you level up, you'll gain new power when you kill the bosses. And then you craft your first crafting table, and you start to look at how deep the crafting goes. You kill your first boss, and you realize that not only do you have the skills, but you have a really in-depth skill tree. You have so many different types of skills to go get, and there's an infinite number of combinations, especially if you play on a PvP server, choosing the right skills to go up against other players with. And you go, oh wow, this game is really deep. There's a lot to do in this game, but it seems really accessible at first. I'm not overwhelmed when I first jump into the game. And that's something really awesome, because so many games have to walk the line between accessible and complex, right? Because if it's not accessible, then your players are gonna dive off as soon as they see all the complex systems. But if it's not complex enough, then eventually you get to the end of the game and you're like, I'm not really interested in this game anymore. I beat it, as it were. Not in this game. There's so much to do, and just from a first impression standpoint, I'm really excited to jump back into the game because it feels like I have dozens, if not hundreds of hours left to play in this game. All right, the second thing is there is excellent combat even in PvE situations. If you've played games like Valheim, you know that there can be some really fun mobs, but for the most part, if you're going up to attack a non-boss PvE mob, they're mostly just punching bags that you dodge around to try to get some experience and loot so that eventually you can kill something with really fun mechanics that's actually a challenge. For me, you'll see in this clip, I started playing and I was absolutely blown away because I started attacking a rogue-like character, like with 2 knives, and then when I attacked him, all of a sudden he stun-locked me, he teleported behind me and stabbed me a couple times in a way that actually really tore down my health bar, to where if I didn't avoid that attack again, I might die. And then there were archers shooting at me at the same time, and I was like, oh wow, this actually has some complex gameplay as far as even PvE combat goes. And then not only that, but whenever you go to another village, you find that there are these guys with shields, and if you hit their shield, you'll be stun locked while their archers try to shoot at you. It's a really complex game with actually really great mechanics on the combat system. I tell you, I was absolutely blown away. Then, if you add the PvP element, well, right as soon as you jump into the game, you're given a really powerful ranged spell, and you're also given a counter, where if they hit you during that counter timer, they get hit with their attack, and you actually receive healing in the amount that they were going to attack you for, as well as a quick buff. And that's really cool because it makes skill-based combat a real possibility. In fact, it humbles me to say it, but I did go and try to attack a player that was like 4 levels lower than me, and they completely trashed me because they played a skill-based game where I was just running in with my swords blazing. It was really impressive, and I think that's what makes this game really cool, is that even in the PvP systems, the combat is rich enough from level 1 to where you can really engage in some fun combat in this game. Okay, number 3, great vampire lore and world building. Like, I'm not a huge vampire fan. I haven't ever read Dracula or watched the movies, but as soon as you're into this game, you realize that the developers have done a great job of creating systems around this idea that you're a vampire. It's not just a vampire reskin of another game. It truly is its own thing with its unique vampire systems. The first one that's really cool is the blood system. There are many different types of blooded enemies in this game where as you kill them, you can take their blood and you can take on buffs from that enemy type. So if you kill a brute enemy type, you actually get a leech. You get a leech every time you attack, you heal a little bit. But if you take the blood from a rogue type enemy, your attack speed goes up. And there's all sorts of different enemies, and you actually gain better buffs the higher level those enemies are. But here's the catch. If you run out of blood in your little blood bank, blood meter thing in the middle of your screen, then you start dying. So you have to continually refresh this blood, and it just runs out over time. It's a really cool mechanic that embraces the vampire fantasy and really allows you to be immersed in the world. There's also garlic that you're weak against. If you stand in sunlight for too long, you start to die. And then even I picked up silver coins at one point, not realizing that I picked them up, and my character started dying, saying, you have to drop the silver coins. It's crazy how in-depth and complex. It's really cool, the attention to detail that the developers have given to this game. I think it's really, really cool. And then my last really big thing that I love just from my first couple hours of playing this game is that this game rewards you for asking the question, what if? Like, what if I did this? Or what if I built my castle this way? Or what if I dragged this enemy over to this other enemy? It really rewards you for asking that question. For example, when I first started out, I was having trouble finding animal skins, and I saw this, way higher level than me standing in a forest. And next to that person, a little bit of ways away, was this like boss elite mob stone golem. And what I thought was, I wonder what would happen if I dragged the stone golem by that player. And I just wondered what would have happened. Well, I went and aggroed the stone golem and dragged him over to the player, and immediately he started killing that player. And then they dropped their loot, and I was able to take their loot. And I know that's really mean, but it was really cool that you could say what would happen. And don't worry, the rest of the stream is karma. I didn't kill another player. I just got destroyed by everybody else. So I think I got paid back for it. It was a really cool moment of the game, allowing you to experiment with its systems and find fun in the midst of it. All right, well, lastly, are there any really big negatives in the game right now as far as from a first impressions perspective? Not really. I think that, being an early access game that was on its first night of release with a huge Twitch viewership, the game held up surprisingly well. There wasn't any lag, there wasn't any server stuttering. The community seemed to be really active on my server. It was actually really impressive how well the game did under pressure. There were a couple of bugs that I noticed. One of them was that when an enemy was on the other side of a wall in my castle, I couldn't see them until I walked out of my castle. So the only problem with that is that, of course, they could then just be waiting at the door and slip in and destroy all my stuff. You wouldn't want that to happen. And I'm sure that Stunlock Games is watching things like that. But really, overall, minus a couple of bugs, in the first couple hours, I haven't really noticed anything too wrong with the game. Now, I am going to be coming out with a full review of this game once I get it more under my belt. Of course, I've only seen a little bit of it. The questions still remain, what happens at 20 and 30 and 40 hours? Are you still having a lot of fun, or have you run out of things to do by then? But I will have an updated review answering questions like that. So be sure to subscribe to this channel. Be sure to like it. And man, if you guys agree, disagree, maybe you just want to say this game looks great, be sure to leave me a comment. I do read all of those, and it's really fun to engage with you guys on the channel. Be sure to enter that giveaway, and as always, just know this: you are more loved than you know, and you're so much more valuable than you realize. I hope you have an awesome day, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Have a great one.
Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave it a like. It's totally free to do. Subscribe if you want to see more. And as always, I'm live on Twitch over at twitch.tv/brightlifecommunity. We're a community of positive and uplifting gamers. Come find a friend to raid with, grab loot with, and just enjoy life together with. Hope you have an awesome day. Be blessed, and you are so loved and so valuable.